This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
The following study of antifascism as a pervasive ideological force may be read as a sequel to my 2016 book, Fascism, Career of a Concept. The present work also revisits themes from my monograph on the post-Marxist left, which originally appeared in 2005. In both those studies, I gave considerable attention to the rising alarm throughout the Western world about the resurgence of fascism, together with the changing definitions assigned to that term. This study will explore, in greater depth, the shifting meaning of fascism, and try to put it in historical perspective. A preoccupation with fascism has resulted, not least of all, from its emotive value, for those who are already in positions of political, journalistic, and educational power. However else it may operate, arousing a fear of fascism serves the interests of the powerful. It also involves associating fascism almost exclusively for rhetorical purposes with Hitler and the destruction of European Jewry. Among our elites, there's a growing unwillingness to treat fascism as a movement that belonged to a specific time and place. The term fascism functions as a resource that the speaker, whether a journalist, actor, comedian, educator, politician, or member of the clergy, can lay hold of to demonize an opponent. In the interwar period, anti-fascist critics were usually coherent and criticized a movement that had taken power in a Western country. But critical discussions of fascism, particularly since World War II, have become both diffuse and imprecatory. Today, the F word is wielded mostly to bully and isolate political opponents, or impose on the unwilling an unrequested therapeutic reconstruction. Most alarmingly, for many observers, anti-fascist activism has led to violence, a trend that escalated in the United States with the election of Donald Trump, but has been going on for decades. From 1968 onward, the Rote Armee fraction in Germany went on a rampage against supposed Nazis in the German government and business community. Before it came to an effective end in 1978, this German anti-fascist underground managed to murder 30 people, while unleashing other forms of physical destruction. At the same time, anti-fascist terrorism was launched by Red Brigades in Italy, which resulted in, among other casualties, the death of Premier Aldo Moro in 1978. In England, since 1985, acts of terror against an alleged fascist threat had been perpetrated by, among others, Anti-Fascist Action, AFA. More recently, since the election of Donald Trump in 2016, Antifa activists have swung into action in large cities across the United States. In this country, however, such turbulent activism on the left is nothing new. In the 1960s, anti-war protests often turned violent, and in the late 1980s, Anti-Racist Action, ARA, was organized by leftist punk fans to fight the right. According to Peter Beinart, this last group took its name because Americans were more familiar with fighting racism than they were with combating fascism. This conflation of fascism and racism, along with other isms, is something I address in this book. After observing the eruptions of violence from bands of militants who claim to be protecting society against a violent right that is often nowhere to be seen, I was motivated to examine the political culture fueling this trend. The crusade of violent anti-fascism is often no more than the final stage of a process of indoctrination that political, educational, and cultural elites have engaged in since the middle of the 20th century. What this crusade represents is an intensification or exaggeration of an official teaching, the spillover effect of a militancy that already permeates vital political and social institutions. The anti-fascist crusade is promoted through the deliberately indiscriminate use of the term fascism, a tendency that George Orwell warned against in his Tribune article of 1944. Although Orwell could not possibly be identified as a fascist, and in fact fought in the Spanish Civil War on the side of the Republican left, he balked at the misuse of the word. By fascism, they mean, roughly speaking, something cruel, unscrupulous, arrogant, obscurantist, anti-liberal, and anti-working class. Except for the relatively small number of fascist sympathizers, almost any English person would accept bully as a synonym for fascist.